everyone, and welcome to another episode of Public Opinion with your hosts, Pam and Vanetta. Hey, Vanetta.
Hi.
Hey, and happy Black History Month. This is the beginning of Black History Month, when all the TV stations and movie channels tell their interns, go into the vault and get every Black movie or TV show that you can find, and we're going to run programming all month. So I'm excited. I get to see all of my favorite Black movies. So this is always a good month.
And remember, it's always nice to say something about MLK. That's what they told me.
Okay, that's right.
MLK.
That's all they know. All they know is I have a dream. That's
okay.
pretty, but I have a dream. But he said, okay. So I'm like, is that the only Black person or quote that you know? But yes. So
and is that the only notable speech? Because it isn't.
Oh my goodness, he has so many more speeches that were.
I mean, the one he delivered at the church. I mean, but let's not go into that.
Yes,
we are being acknowledged. There was a time they would have never considered that.
That's right. And if you see, we have on our college t-shirts, paraphernalia. And so we are going to be talking about historically Black colleges on this show today versus predominantly white institutions. And so that's going to be the question that we are going to be talking about. And speaking, unfortunately, about our HBCUs, they have been under threat. There, at least 14 of them have had bomb threats. But I was reading that they have at least apprehended some, alleged suspects. So hopefully they will get to the bottom of all of that, because that's just awful. It's absolutely
many
awful.
Universities, but I don't believe it's many actual people doing it. It's a few copycats, and then those who have organized this.
Okay.
But the base of it is hate.
Yes, it is. That's it. That's exactly what the base of it is. So I am looking forward to meeting our participants this week and talking about that subject of HBCUs versus PWIs. And we have a special guest host. It is our millennial guest host, not the normal Taylor Morton, because she is busy taking care of a little one. So
still on maternity leave.
So we do have a very special millennial guest host, and that is my son, Brian Morton, who has agreed to return and assist us in hosting the show today. So we are going to meet Brian. Brian is a relationship manager at PNC Bank, and he is a 2012 graduate of Ohio University. So let's meet Brian. Hi, Brian. Welcome to the show, and thank you for agreeing to be a special guest host with us today.
Good evening. How are you two?
I am fine. I'm wonderful. And happy Black History Month to you.
Happy Black History Month to you as well.
All right. So, Brian, you also are going to answer the question. But before I ask you the question, we are going to meet our other participants for this week. We have Caitlin Howell. Caitlin is a 2021 graduate of Spelman College and plans on enrolling in medical school. And then Vanetta, I want you to introduce the next guest, who is your husband, Richard Perry.
Well, my husband, Richard Perry, is an insurance executive in the state of Ohio, and he has recently been appointed by the governor to the board of Central State University. And he is a graduate of the class of 1986 of Central State.
And finally, we have Dr. Michelle Scott Taylor. Dr. Taylor is the Chief Program Officer at College Now Greater Cleveland and provides strategic leadership for the organization's programmatic efforts, including school and community-based advising programs, as well as federal programs such as Talent Search, Gear Up, and Upward Bound. All right, so let's meet our participants. Well, thank you all so very much for agreeing to be participants on the show this week. And I cannot wait to hear what your responses are to the public opinion question. So we are going to get started and see what that question is. Historically, Black colleges and universities, or HBCUs, versus predominantly white institutions, or PWIs, What are the benefits of attending either institution and which provides a better overall experience for students of color? All right. I think that's a great question. And Brian, as our guest host, I want you to start and answer that question. So go ahead, and you're going to have 2 minutes.
So I would say going to a predominantly white institution allowed myself to understand how America works on a day-to-day basis, because not everyone that I went to school looked like me. Now, my upbringing, I felt a little bit more comfortable going to a predominantly white school. And why was that? Was because I did go to a predominantly white high school, predominantly white city where I was growing up. So growing up that way set me up to be a little bit more comfortable with my surroundings going to a predominantly white institution, which also allowed myself to be a little bit more comfortable going to corporate America, because my managers, my bosses, a lot of those people don't often look like us as Black Americans. So even though I wouldn't want to say that it would be better to go to a predominantly white school or better to go to an HBCU, I would just say going to a predominantly white school allowed myself to at least understand the navigation of white America and what I would have to at least deal with once I would get out of college, when I start looking for jobs out there.
All right, great answer. That's a great answer. And so, Katie, I think I'm going to let you go next. Go ahead.
So I definitely agree with Brian in the fact that it depends on the individual as to like what experience they would want. But for me personally, I went to a predominantly white high school, went to predominantly white schools all my life, and that was the reason why I chose to go to Spelman. Dealing with a lot of the microaggressions and a lot of, I guess you could say, like the undercover racism. It wasn't as blatant, but I still noticed it and I still felt it. And I wanted to go to an institution where I felt like I would be celebrated. And I got that at Spelman. So being around Black girls from all different walks of life, and walking into that space and being invited as a sister, and then telling you, to watch your sisters back. I feel like in HBCU, I got more of a family experience, which was important to me. And so I really enjoyed my experience, just with, again, them stressing us learning about where we come from, learning our history. We're required to take courses about Black women and our existence from like the African diaspora until now. And so learning about where you come from, I think you get that from an HBCU, which is a really, really good experience. And then also how to navigate rooms where you're in rooms full of people who don't look like you, and my school teaching me how to walk into a room, how to talk, how to handle yourself in professional settings. We personally get that one-on-one treatment, and, as Black people, we have to work harder. And so at HBCUs, I felt like, I was groomed in order to walk into spaces where I might not encounter people who look like me, and I still have the same confidence. They teach us how to talk, and so that's what I enjoyed the most.
Oh, that's a very good answer as well. That's very good. I can't wait till we start our actual conversation, because the same thing that you were saying, Brian was saying also for some of the reasons why he did not go to an HBCU. All right, so now we will hear from Rick Perry. Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you for inviting me. This is a very good subject. I think it's a subject that's talked about in our community quite a bit. I fall down on the side of, I think that there is no African-American student that would not benefit from attending an HBCU. Like Brian, I was raised in a predominantly white suburban community, graduated from a high school that was a public high school that was highly rated at that time. And so I had, I think, the tools that Brian's talking about coming out of high school. I knew how to interact. I knew what was what. The value proposition that I got from Central State, however, I could have never imagined. And I think that one of the biggest takeaways are 3 words: need, love, and want. At Central State, or historically Black universities, they need us. Without Black students, they wither and die. If you graduate from that institution, you love it and they love you. And they want you. At predominantly white institutions, they don't really need you. They don't love you. And in many instances, they don't want you there. Not necessarily the institution itself, but the student body, the alumni, the coaching staffs, and what have you. And so I went to Ohio State University on a track scholarship. I like to say that because people don't believe me when they see me today. But I went there on a track scholarship. I stayed there for a year. And then I ended up going to Central State, mainly because my academic discipline it was too much for me to do, too much stimulation at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. And I had too many benefits. I had a car and my mother was sending me money, blah, blah, blah. But the other thing that was missing for me at Ohio State was that need, that love, and that want.
All right, and finally, we're going to hear from Dr. Taylor, and go ahead.
All right, so thank you so much for having me. And as many of you know, I help students, what I try to do is help students find their best fit college. And undoubtedly, I think for African-American students, an HBCU experience is one that most of us wanted. And unfortunately, not all of us were able to have, though we wanted very desperately, I will say. And so I think there's no question that what you gain from attending an HBCU can really help build social capital, which is what I heard Katie talk about. But also, I think that at PWIs, predominantly white institutions, you have to work harder at building that social capital. So ultimately, I feel like education, any educational attainment past high school is very important. And I recognize that when we attend PWIs, which many of us do, that we have to work harder at, like you said, building confidence, knowing how to navigate rooms, knowing how to deal with microaggressions from those who might be racist or do racist things on those campuses. And so really, I think the pros and cons of each, I lean more towards HBCUs as being a better overall experience for students of color, especially. And I also agree that if you attend a PWI, sometimes you might feel like you're more comfortable in corporate America or white spaces, but I see lots of students who still struggle graduating from PWIs because they have not had the opportunity to build that social capital that you need to be successful and feel good about, your education. Like I never go to my college's homecoming. That's something I miss desperately that I didn't get from not going to an HBCU. But see, I grew up in Warrensville. So a lot of things that I think students who attend HBCUs get, I got K-12 education. So going to a PWI was culture shock, but I had all the tools and confidence that I needed to be successful because I did grow up in a predominantly Black neighborhood where, all those opportunities to build social capital were available to me.
All right. I think all of you have given so far very good pros or reasons for both. And I know I'll just give my opinion right now. I know when I was looking for colleges and when my kids were looking for colleges also, I remember I went to a predominantly white high school. And I remember the guidance counselor there trying to steer me to go to a community college. And that was just kind of like what they did. I'm like, we spent all this money just like all these other students did at this high school. It was a college preparatory school. I'm going to go to college, you know, and so I went to a school. For me, I went to a school that was affordable for us. And that's another thing with sometimes with HBCUs, I find, you know, I found them to be kind of cost prohibitive, a lot of them as well. But I also already felt like I had the experience from going to a predominantly white high school. So I figured I could navigate myself well at Kent State University, which is where I went. And now, Vanetta, what do you think about that?
Well, I had a similar experience with my guidance counselor in the 12th grade. I took some type of assessment test, and she suggested that I end up going to some type of trade program to be work in a nursing home with elderly. And we didn't have the vocabulary that Katie has at that time. My mother called up there and she said, if someone like you could go to college, so can my daughter. Mm-hmm. And that let me know right then. The school I went to was probably 30% white and so 70% black, but the guidance at the school was predominantly white, and they were not looking out for my best interest. And I had one teacher who was a Central State graduate, and she said, "You're a nice young lady, and I want to tell you where you can go to school and be loved." And she sent me to Central State. She paid for me to go on the tour. So I knew love from the moment the idea popped in my head.
Yeah, and you know, and Rick, you mentioned that too about being loved. And you know, I can honestly say I didn't really feel like the faculty loved me so much, but I do think that I worked hard to get their respect and their attention, because I know before I went to college, my mother told me, make sure you sit in the front row of all of your classes so that your professors know that you're there and they know that you are serious. And so for me, I think it was more or less, I was doing what I needed to do to get there. And, you know, and I made friends. And Brian, what would you say? I know with what Rick said and what Vanetta said is more like and even Katie, like you have this family feeling from the professors, but did you feel that way, or did you because you still had Black professors and people who were in leadership who took you under your wing, under their wing, I'm sorry.
And I would like to actually probably a little bit expand on that, especially going with what Rick was saying. I think that this is a loaded question. It's not about which institution, in my opinion, is better. I think it comes down to the individual, because every individual is different, and every Black American is different. Every single person on this call is different. And I mean that by, like, you know, I had a great upbringing with, you know, a mother and a father, both a Delta and an Alpha, who instilled those different Black values in myself on a day-to-day basis. So I felt like I got a lot of the historical, you know, aspects of learning about what it is to be a Black American on a day-to-day basis from my mother and my father. Which a lot of us are not, you know, fortunate enough to have both a mother and a father that can instill those values on us on a day-to-day basis. So I think that upbringing, as well as going to a predominantly white high school in Twinsburg, Ohio, allowed myself to at least feel comfortable navigating through society that way. But I think that it all comes down to that individual, because I do think that I often feel like, you know, maybe I could have went to a historically Black college and still been successful of what I'm doing right now, because I had that foundation that was, you know, that allowed me to understand my knowledge, understand my history. So I think it just really comes down to that individual, how that person has been brought up, opposed to the different colleges. Because I will say, Rick did mention the fact of, like, they don't want you. But I will say sometimes us going to a predominantly white school allows us to help our white brothers and sisters that may not have been growing up around Black people to understand how they can navigate around us. So once they get out of college, they can understand how Black Americans think, how they interact with other people on a day-to-day basis. So it is a very loaded question, but that's how I kind of look at it.
Okay. And then now, Katie, what do you think about that? Now, I know you stated that one of the reasons that you did go to an HBCU is because you went to a predominantly white institution. And so now that you have graduated, how do you think that experience has helped you or will help you in whatever else that you are going to do?
So I think that experience has helped me tremendously. What I've learned is that like the HBCU network is so vast, and so meeting different African Americans who maybe I want to go into the medical field, and so Black people are far and few, especially Black doctors, and so a lot of the Black doctors are HBCU grads, whether it's medical school or undergrad, and so just having that connection when I'm expressing to them that I want to become a doctor, and then them taking me under their wing. And then also Spelman just granted a lot of opportunities for me in general. Just at Spelman, I was able to go to Capitol Hill to advocate on maternal mortality issues. And during that trip, again, I met HBCU grads who were in the White House who were I met someone who actually went to Beechwood who graduated from Spelman, and she became my mentor. And although, you know, she's in government and that's not what I want to do, again, it just opened my network. And now going to a PWI for graduate school, it's a lot different. And, but again, I'm able to navigate that space just because of what I went through previously, and dispel a lot of myths about HBCU versus PWIs and like the education rigor. And yeah, but I think that Spelman has greatly prepared me to enter the world and help me navigate this new space of being an adult in the work world.
All right.
Can I add something, Pam?
Sure.
I want to say that Brian is correct. It is a loaded question. It shouldn't be a versus like one's better than the other. It's about options. I believe that if you are a Black high school student or a parent with a high school student, you've got to at least consider, tour, visit an HBCU. According to a recent United Negro College Fund study, our HBCUs in the United States produce 19% of all STEM degrees for Black students. 50% of Black doctors are from HBCUs, 50%. 50% of Black lawyers are from HBCUs, and 80% of Black judges are from HBCUs around the country. And so there is no question of the value proposition of historically Black colleges and the role they play in our community. And so I just think it's important to find that little niche. I'm going to get on a soapbox here, so stop me if I'm taking too long. But the whole idea of desegregation, which we fought for, severely punished Black businesses and Black institutions of higher learning, because now we have the option. Sadly, as a people, we didn't plan for our sustainability once desegregation took place. And it's based on a theory that, white is better. And so PWIs are better, or HBCUs are inferior. And so many ways we perpetuate our own demise by having those attitudes. And I just think when you look at the numbers I just talked about, it dispels that concern about inferiority. Central State, you have to have the same credits and the same classes as you to graduate as you do from Kent State or Cleveland State or Ohio State. It's a state university just like all the other ones.
Right. I think, I agree with you. I think it comes down to really the individual student and what it is the needs are, and then you have to take it from there. Like with anything else, it's not straight across the board. And if we're going to look at the history of it, like you stated, the whole reason that we have historically Black universities is because we were not able to attend or be admitted to those.
Exactly right.
So we had
Very
to have
important
them.
statement.
Yes.
That's a very important
Yes.
statement. And that's why we must take care of our own as well, because if we don't, we will cease to exist. I have 3 sons. 2 went to predominantly white colleges. 1 went to a HBCU.
Mhm.
Proudly, my husband and I can say Central State University. The 2 are graduates. The 3rd one is still there,
Mhm.
but there is a difference with that 3rd boy. His sense of self is different. His conversation is different, and a level of commitment. Like Dr. Taylor said, going back to a homecoming.
Mhm.
We have homecoming in October. In December, we start talking about who's coming to homecoming next
Yeah.
year. Okay, they have a tradition at Central State, which I think is the most adorable thing. You go back to your old dorm room and knock on the door. If the student is in there, you give them money.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
When I run into, my son has been out with his Central State shirt on and telling people he's still at Central State, and they've actually gone in their pocket as graduates and given him money. I don't think that's happened at OU or Kent for my
Wow.
other kids.
Yeah, that's something. I think that's just wonderful. I know you told me that story before, and I thought that was wonderful. I certainly wish at Kent State somebody had knocked on my door and given me some money. That's
I'd be rich
wonderful.
as much as I wear
Hey,
this.
that's a new
Okay.
tradition, because nobody
That's
knocked
new.
on my door and gave me
Oh,
nothing.
that's
But-
a new.
It is new, but it's steeped in tradition. But there's an
Yes.
old tradition. When you start at Central State, there is a prayer service the night
Wow.
before classes start. They give you a candle, you walk through a particular way.
Mm.
When you end, there's a prayer service and you reverse that walk.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's
Hey,
wonderful.
Pam, how much time? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Doc.
I,
I'm sorry, Doc.
I definitely want to give Dr. Taylor an opportunity to please state again what it is that College Now does for students and what it is that you can offer to a student, especially if they have this question about or trying to decide what college they want to go to.
Okay, but before I answer that, I just want to say part of the appeal and the desire and what makes HBCU so special is because of the traditions that are steeped
Mhm.
in our culture. And I feel like many of the students that I serve don't have that rich tradition instilled or brought up in a rich tradition where, you know, it's a connection to who we are as a people. And so that's why I think HBCUs are very important and relevant, and as many students who can attend should attend. Okay, so let me just say that. Now, at College Now, what we basically do is we try to help students who are individuals, so I absolutely agree with that, find their best fit. Because like I said, in my high school, in my community, we had traditions as well. So we were able to kind of understand who we were, where we came from, because our whole school was Black. So we got all the Black stuff that we needed, so that no matter what institution we went to, many of us were able, if we went to an institution, many of us were able to navigate because we did have a strong foundation that was built for us. At College Now, we try to help students find their best fit. Essentially, in most high schools across Northeast Ohio and even into Mansfield, we put people in place to help students think about and plan for what it is they want to do after high school. When it comes to HBCUs, we partner with the Urban League by funding seats on their HBCU tour bus. Now, they haven't done it in a couple of years because of the pandemic, but what we try to do is partner with organizations where their primary mission is HBCUs, and send students to like Anthony Brown, or we send students and staff to staff the HBCU fair that's at Warrensville, and we present workshops. And we also, what we try to do is have college tours for HBCU. So I have a set of tours that happen where we go down south. Primarily, we go down south. We take that Spelman, Morehouse, we do Clark, Atlanta, all the way down to Tuskegee. So we do college tours. We help students complete applications. We do try to help. The most important thing for many of our students is finding the financial aid. And the challenge that we have with our HBCUs, I think you mentioned it earlier, is that sometimes we can't make the financial aid work. And so we do things like we call the college and we try to see, are there special opportunities? We have them apply for national scholarships. We have a strong scholarship that College Now offers, but usually that is the gap. So every year I have 1 or 2 students who are struggling to stay at their HBCU, and we're scrambling trying to figure out how can we get them that last $2,000 so that they can return that next semester. That is our biggest challenge with HBCUs that we're continuously trying to overcome and navigate. And I have one other thing to say if I have a second.
Okay, you got 1 second.
So in CMSD, the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, for example, the Say Yes program is there. And we have a compact with 70 private institutions. Several of them are HBCUs. So if a student graduates from a Cleveland school and they're a Cleveland resident, they have the opportunity to go to an HBCU tuition free because they're part of the Say Yes program. But the challenge is they still need room and board. So there's always the caveat, we got to figure something out. But that's what we do at college now. And that's how we help students think about what they want to do past high school. And then specifically, how can we help many of our students who have the desire to get to an HBCU?
Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate that. And I think everybody gave a very good perspective about HBCUs and predominantly white institutions. And I do believe what it comes down to is the individual student, but we have to continue to support our HBCUs, especially now that a lot of them have trouble with funding. And unfortunately, they have been in the news this week because of these bomb threats. And we want to keep everybody, those institutions in our thoughts and in our prayers. And we are happy that they have apprehended some alleged suspects, and we hope that they will be convicted for those particular crimes. But thank you all so much. Congratulations, Rick, on being appointed to the Board of Trustees of Central State University. Good luck to you, Katie, and continued good luck to you, Brian. And thank you for being a co-host, and you will be on several shows in the future. So thank you all so much. Bye-bye. That was a great show. I think it was a great topic. Everybody was very passionate about their answers.
Very passionate. My huge bias is I love this show. It might be my favorite.
Yeah, the same with me. You know, I have a great deal of respect, though, for our historically Black colleges and universities. And like I said, they were born out of a need. Right. And the fact that right now there are 121 HBCUs still in, so we have to support them. We have to, even if you don't attend one, you can still support them. You can and just tell other people about them as well. But I do think it comes down to the individual to determine what is the best place for them to go to get their education.
And you know what, another big thing that I think is a plus that we didn't talk about is that there are more marriages that come out of HBCUs than other colleges for African Americans.
Oh, so such as your own.
Such as my own, right. And long-lasting marriages.
Yes. So this was a great topic. And if you enjoyed the show, please make sure that you like and subscribe, as well as follow us on Facebook. And we do have a podcast now, so look for us anywhere that you listen to your podcast. So until next time, we'll see you for another episode of Public Opinion. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.